Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. For those of you who have joined us before, and for those of you who are new, this is 90 Stories for 90 Years. This project is in celebration of Fraternity and Sorority Life being at DePaul for 90 years. And so we are interviewing 90 students, faculty and staff, advisors, and alumni. And so I'm really excited to be joined by Kevin O'Brien today. He is an alumni of one of the IFC fraternities, and so we're going to hear a little bit more about his story. My name is Natalie Stone, and I work in the Office of Student Involvement and oversee the Fraternity and Sorority Life community. So we are excited that you have joined us today. So Kevin, can you go ahead and get us started with an introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Natalie. This is such a cool project that you've put together to really highlight kind of where we've been and where we're going with fraternity and sorority life at DePaul. I think it's just super exciting. So thanks for having me. So like you said, I'm an alumnus of DePaul University and of Phi Gamma Delta, FIJI. I'm a founding father of that Lambda Pi chapter at DePaul University, which is super cool. Graduated with my degree in public relations and advertising in 2011. And currently employed by DePaul University. I work in the Office of Advancement and assist with our campaign operations and the vice presidential kind of team.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you were a founding member of your organization. So tell us about that experience. How did that come about? Any unique parts of joining as a founding member?
Yeah, I mean, my entire fraternal experience is kind of unique in the sense that I joined as, as an alumnus, right? So I didn't join as an undergraduate brother. Like I had graduated and was working full time, and it was different in that sense. But what I was able to experience was kind of the colonization process on the outside, right? So, I was working in the student involvement at the time in which FIJI was a colony, right? So I got to get to know, the folks from headquarters and to kind of see their recruitment process of who the eventual brothers that would be. And so it was so fascinating to see kind of their approach and the different types of men that they were recruiting. And the incredible thing about being kind of a founding member is you have this ability to shape the foundation of the organization and of the chapter, right? So you get to kind of determine who and what type of men are going to be a part of this organization. What is your mission? What is your vision? And I think that's kind of was and is the really cool part about kind of being a founding member.
So you kind of started speaking about this, but why did you choose to join your chapter as an alumni? Because that's a very different experience, and maybe talk through what roles you took on as an alumni member.
Yeah, so I mean, I was a relatively young alumni at that point, right? So maybe a year out of from graduating. So I still, was young at heart, so it didn't feel that weird. But, I had always from a younger age, like in high school, kind of had this idea and sense that I would be a part of a fraternity in college. Just, I don't know, just kind of always what I wanted. But when I got to DePaul, I didn't really have that fit, or I didn't really mesh with any of the chapters that were on campus at the time. And that's not to say that, they aren't great or weren't great chapters. It just wasn't the right fit for me. So when this opportunity arose with, FIJI kind of starting up a chapter and getting to know some of the men that were, part of the organization, it really kind of aligned with who I was and kind of my values. And also, I just think, FIJI really, at least the Lambda Pi chapter, reflected the larger population of DePaul University, right? So those kind of founding members were of diverse backgrounds. So they were men of color, they were queer folks, they were, first gen college students. So they really mirrored kind of who we were as an institution. And I really liked that. And I was really drawn to that. And so that was one piece, but also just working in student involvement and being around students and really enjoying kind of developing and seeing the growth in them, and so that also, like, being able to play a role in that, because I had a different perspective. I was a little bit older and was able to maybe provide a little bit of guidance. So that's such a critical thing, especially for a young chapter. You don't really have that history, right? You don't have, you have some of it from kind of a national standpoint, right? So obviously, headquarters is providing tons of services and folks from that standpoint, but really to have someone on the ground to help guide and shape some of the practices of the chapter and help grow the brothers is what I thought was a really kind of cool, unique experience. And just overall, like, when we think about the purpose of fraternities, like, it is this brotherhood, right? It is to kind of have lifelong friendships and lifelong relationships. And so I graduated during the recession, right? So I was one of those people that really entered the real world in a time that wasn't super great. I was, for all intents and purposes, slightly underemployed, right? Kind of feeling a little bit down on myself. And what this brought to me was a renewed sense of energy, a renewed sense of belonging, a renewed sense of having a purpose, and having these brothers that were supporting me in all aspects of my life. And I think what it did was it gave me kind of a new lease on life, a new kind of jumping off point and a spark. And I think I'm so grateful for my experience.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that you really found that FIJI aligned well with your own values. And of course, when you join an organization, you learn about all the values of that organization. So can you talk a little bit about what your favorite value is of FIJI and why?
Yeah, I talked about it just like extensively as friendship, right? So that's kind of my favorite value, is like, man, that is like the base of kind of being a human, our relationships and how we connect with others. And at its core, FIJI is really about friendship. It's about brotherhood. It's about being there for each other. There isn't a week that goes by that I don't have some kind of conversation or, something with one of my brothers, right? And I think that's it. That at its base is what it means to be a part of a fraternity. It's a brotherhood. It's a support network. It's all of those things, and I think that's why that's my favorite value.
Awesome. And I know I think you already alluded to like so many things. So why do you think someone should join a fraternity and sorority life, especially right now during a really hard time with the pandemic and everything that's going on in our world? So why would you join a fraternity or sorority right now?
Oh, there's so many reasons, right? But I think we hit on it, right? It's relationships, it's the connections. It's, right now we need people more than ever, right? We need our friends, our family, our colleagues, we need those interactions more than ever before, because we can't physically be with people, but you still need to have them, because there's a lot of emotional stress happening right now. There's a lot of physical stress happening right now. And to have people you can lean on that are there to support you or say, yeah, I'm going through that too. Or maybe we can get together on a Zoom and just, chat for a couple of minutes or virtually, I don't know.
Play video.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's so important right now. And I think that's what fraternity and sorority life gives our students, right? It gives them those relationships, but also a sense of belonging, right? So, my experience was I was on campus. I, was going to basketball games. I was going to involvement fairs. I was doing all of those things. So I felt an affinity. I felt an engagement with the institution because I was physically there. And some of that is going to be lacking for our students, right? That they're not physically on campus. They're not walking the halls of, McGaw or, arts and letters. Not having those casual run-ins with folks in their classrooms because you're on Zoom, right? So you can't stick around and chat with someone that you made a really kind of cool point in during the class. all of those kind of natural engagement pieces are missing. So that is what fraternity and sorority life can offer, right? So these kind of regular chapter meetings, or the one-off events that your chapter will be organizing. So I think it's a great opportunity, and also just feel engaged with the institution, and feel pride, and feel a sense of affinity. I think that's very important.
And we've heard from so many students that joined a fraternity or sorority this quarter, that it's like their like sense of normalcy, and being able to like be a part of a community again, especially for first year students. They were virtual their last semester of their senior year. Now they're virtual for the first semester of their first year, and so they're trying to make connections, and as you said, find that like sense of belonging, find out like a little bit more about who they are. And so many of them are so thankful that they found a community through Fraternity and Sorority Life. Even though it does look different, I think our chapters are trying to be really creative and innovative. Think about, how do we have like a really fun chapter meeting? Like, do we all dress up for Halloween? Like, do we play different games? And I think it's also creating less barriers to join as well, because if there's students that are commuter students, maybe they're more likely to join because they don't have to drive in for a half-hour chapter meeting. They can like still engage in so many different ways.
Totally. And I hope that's something that, we talk about kind of what would you like to see stick around because of this pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. And, there's lots of things that, we've changed as a society that we want to probably, keep. And I think one of those things is really thinking about the modalities in which, our brothers or sisters are able to interact with us, right? Because, DePaul has a very unique student population in which, a lot of students commute in for their courses, or would hypothetically commute if we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And so, while it is very important to be in person when we can be in person, maybe we can make some shifts as, a community to maybe make it easier for folks who might be commuters to come to a chapter meeting. Maybe you've got a dual modality of chapter meeting is both a hybrid of online and in person.
Yeah. So much can change.
So much.
Okay. And you kind of talking about like a week doesn't go by that you don't connect with a fellow brother. So how have you, continued to be involved as an alumni? And what advice would you give to seniors that are going to be graduating? Like, how do they still stay connected with their organization?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I obviously not obviously, but I was a staff advisor for our chapter for 3.5 years. So that was kind of my one way of giving back, and such a cool way of staying engaged, and being able to be a mentor to the younger, cohorts that come through. So that was one way, right? And then I built really long-lasting relationships with our folks at HQ. So I mean, still to this day, like I meet up with folks from headquarters who like weren't part of my chapter, but like because I played that role as a staff advisor and also as a founding member, like I built these really lifelong relationships with them. That's just super cool. But yeah, I mean, stay engaged as much as you possibly can, and that can be reaching out to the current president and saying, hey, I would love to offer a workshop on financial planning, right? Or whatever. Or maybe it's just coming to one of the chapter meetings and talking about, your own experience. Or there are multitudes of ways of staying engaged. But I think also the sense of representation of continuing to live out the mission of your organization. And so when I think about, the years since kind of being a staff advisor, and, my engagement has kind of fallen off a little bit, right? With specifically with the chapter, right? But I still embody those values in my different levels of volunteerism. So, I was staff advisor for the dance marathon folks at University of Washington when I worked there. And, to me that, it's such a cool organization and this idea of service, and so it's living it out there and Also, I sit on a board for a gift drive here in Chicago called Chicago Survivors, which benefits families and children of who've been affected by gun violence. And the cool thing about that organization is I'm on that board, and I would say 50% of them have come from Fraternity and Sorority Life at DePaul University, right? So these are folks who are still living out that mission and those values and this idea that service is so critical and so important. And so I've been able to connect in that way as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. It's a good point of like your connection or engagement extends beyond your own chapter. Like you mentioned, like you have really strong relationships with headquarters, and then you sit on a board with members of fraternities and sororities from fraternities and sororities at DePaul, but even though they're not your own, there's still that connection there. And I think that's a really cool part about being an alumni. Like there's like always this like instant connection if you are part of an FSL organization. Doesn't matter which council or which chapter, like there's always this instant connection and you can talk through that. And like, there's just something that always like gels really well. And so I think that's so important for our graduates to realize is like even if you don't stay connected, with that DePaul chapter, like you can get connected in the Chicagoland area or wherever you end up moving as well.
That's right. Totally.
So you've been with DePaul for a long time. And so I'm so curious to hear now as an alumni, what does it mean to be a Blue Demon?
Wow. Let's unpack that one. I mean, it means something different for everybody, right? But I think at the core of DePaul and what it means to be a Blue Demon is to take what you've learned and do something with it to better the community that you live in, to better this world that you live in. Going back to this idea that we're rooted in Vincentian values and we're rooted in service and the God-given dignity of every human being on this planet. And so that looks very different for everybody. And that doesn't mean you have to be, a community organizer on the west side of Chicago in order to be living out the mission of DePaul. It's not what it means. That means, whatever path and career that you take, you remember to give back in some way. You remember to better the community that you're living in some way. And maybe that's, a donation to the local food pantry, or maybe that's giving up a Saturday afternoon to clean up a local park. There's different ways to live out that mission, and it's not all or nothing. And I think that's really important to remember that. And so to me, that's what it means to be a Blue Demon. It means to be kind of a member of your community, wherever that is. And yeah.
And I think that's what Fraternity for Life does. And I'm always like so impressed with our community and them always thinking about like how they can facilitate change. And I think that's, with this Generation Z, they are these creators and they want to think through like, how can I create change locally and then, beyond that as well. And so I think they, live out what it means to be a Blue Demon every day. So in closing, can you share with us your favorite memory of being in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was when, I officially went through initiation, right? And you are now a full-fledged member of the organization. And obviously, can't talk much about it, but it was one of those life-changing moments where you felt like, I felt like I was a larger part of something, and I felt more connected to my brothers than ever before, because we just kind of all went through this extremely unique experience. And it was so powerful, and it was just really cool. And I think to me, that was one of my fondest memories. But man, I've got a ton of memories across, the many years. And I'm just so thankful that I did decide to join, as an alumnus and I'm a proud alumni of, FIJI. And I'm so excited to be able to share that experience and share kind of what that looks like for me.
That's awesome. And we're like, so excited that you are still part of the DePaul community. And, I highly suggest that any FIJIs that are watching this connect with Kevin, because I think he gives some really good advice from seeing FIJI from the beginning to now where the chapter is now. So thank you for joining us, Kevin. And we hope everyone has a great weekend. Bye.